On December 9th, 1965, households across the United States sat down to watch one of the nation's most beloved comic strips come to life on TV. With a mere 6 month schedule available for completing it, the creative team behind the Charlie Brown Christmas special worked around the clock to get it finished. And despite studio pushback on its gentle pace, not including a laugh track and even the choice of music, they stuck to their vision. A great deal of thought, care, and attention went into transforming the flat 2D comic panel into a fully fleshed out animation, and in early December, just days before the broadcast, the final version of the show was screened, and the director hated it. The studio execs did too, of course, but thanks to an agreement with Coca-Cola and having already advertised it, they had no choice but to air it. How sad for the studio to have invested all that money only to see this pile of absolute dreck presented to them. A sad tale of creators taking liberties and letting their imaginations run wild without thinking of the commercial implications of their actions. And that's the story of A Charlie Brown Christmas, a work of passion featuring a beloved comic strip that, despite the best of intentions, was doomed from the very beginning. So why, you may ask, am I, someone not even born in 1965 and not from the United States, talking about this obscure, unheard of piece of total garbage, and more to the point, how do I even know it exists? Well, incredibly, some unknown studio acquired the distribution rights and decided to sell this strange, round piece of plastic which you can insert into a black box that sits under your TV that so many of us inexplicably have in 2023. On a whim, I decided to part with my hard-earned cash and pick it up to see what could have possessed them to make such a financially ruinous decision. Anyway, it turns out the studio execs were full of shit, and it went on to become a total smash hit with audiences, spawning countless more specials and movies. Incredibly, it turns out the creators and artists had a better understanding of the material than the studio execs did. Weird. Don't worry, the section of the video where I pretend that no one knows what this is over now. It's all serious analysis from here on in. Promise. A Charlie Brown Christmas aired in many countries, and while it remains a staple of the holiday period in the US, it is fair to say that isn't exactly the case all around the world. But it was for me. I genuinely love its message.
That beautiful sound of cold, hard cash. That beautiful, beautiful sound. Nickels, nickels, nickels.
And its charm.
Dear Santa Claus, how have you been? Did you have a nice summer? How is your wife? I have been extra good this year, so I have a long list of presents that I want. Oh, brother.
And I was delighted to pick up this 4K restoration. I guess we should get the review of the disc out of the way now, before discussing the wider topic of restoration and preservation, because I have a lot to say about that, and my conflicting feelings when it comes to presenting old media in the modern day. First of all, is there a need for a 4K restoration of this? And is there a significant improvement over the old Blu-ray? Well, I think it's great that we do have a 4K disc for this, but improvements at this point are minimal, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest spending more money on it. But if you only have a DVD, then for sure grab a copy. Remember, it's not on broadcast television anymore, so if you decide you want to watch it, you'll have to stump up a month's subscription to Apple TV Plus. Given that this is a staple in so many homes, having a physical copy makes financial sense for many of us. This is an excellent disc, and it's hard to imagine how it could be improved. This was, after all, created over 50 years ago in double quick time, and that means the issues that were present are always going to be there. Scratches and damage have been largely cleaned up, so it's a nice crisp image, but short of completely remaking it, issues with the animation that are baked into the original film are here to stay. And that's a good thing. We're not here to remake a classic that holds such significant cultural importance. We want to preserve it, and as far as I'm concerned, the rather rough animation really adds to its charm. The audio is a little more frustrating though, as we are only given a 5.1 track, and while I don't actually know all the details, I'd imagine this originally would have been a mono mix. It does sound pretty good to my ears, and care does seem to have been taken to ensure the correct placement of at least most of the audio elements within the correct channels. From our perspective in 2023, this works fine, but from a preservation point of view, it isn't good. I'm a strong proponent of giving people the option to hear the original mix, and pretending it doesn't exist leaves a bad taste. A similar thing happened to the Terminator, so I bought a Laserdisc player and a specific copy of that film so I could hear it. And you know what? It was awesome. A Charlie Brown Christmas might well have had a great sounding mono or stereo track, but chances are I'll never know. It might surprise you to learn that the version presented here isn't the original version that was first broadcast. In subsequent years, after the special proved popular, CBS would make changes to fix a few continuity errors and remove the Coca-Cola branding. Now, I'm not going to say I'm horrified by the absence of Coca-Cola branding in my wholesome holiday specials, but the way they went about it leaves a little to be desired. Let's take a step back and look at the topic of revisionism as a whole, and there's no better place to start than with... I know this has been done to death, so I won't dwell on this too much, but bear with me for a couple of minutes. In 1997, I went to watch the first Star Wars Special Edition, my first time seeing one of my favourite films on the big screen, and I was presented with a dinosaur and this lump of turd passing for Jabba the Hutt. The director, George Lucas, had decided to add in a lot of crap for no good reason. I never liked any of this, and I never watched it again. Lucas would continue tinkering with this Oscar-winning film for many years, and the changes are too numerous to mention here, but it's safe to say it breaks the film in a number of ways. Character motivations are altered, shots are obscured, the colour grading is way off, and even the audio has been messed with. On the whole, I don't really care what Lucas decides to do with this film anymore, but I do still care that the original film that I love is no longer available to buy. If it weren't for the amazing work of fans, they wouldn't exist at all. I sometimes like to think about the VFX artists checking their notes and working through a classic film, frame by frame, messing it all up at the request of a director. Okay, that frame looks good. Let's check the next one. Ah, yes, the lightsaber is messed up. Let's fix that. Perfect, that looks better. I'll just check the notes again. Oh yeah, I need to add a fucking dinosaur. Ironically, the one thing in that movie that always annoyed me since I was a little boy, and genuinely did take me out of the film for a moment, seems to be the one thing Lucas didn't change. Another director that likes to mess with his films is James Cameron, which is also a crying shame because his movies are so popular and culturally important. I purchased a 4K UHD of Terminator 2 Judgement Day and immediately returned it. Spent my money importing a specific US Blu-ray instead. On the 4K UHD, the colours are a nightmare, and it had this terrible, excessive amount of digital noise reduction. For context, this is what the actual movie looks like, and this is total shit. If I pay for a movie, I expect to get the movie, not a mess of colours featuring waxwork models. But believe it or not, I'm really not as strict as many others. Sure, I'd much prefer the movie was left untouched except for a clean-up process, but I give directors a lot of leeway when it comes to fixing up a few errors. If the special edition was merely fixing up a few lightsabers, then I don't think many people would have had an issue with it. And all those forums and fans that dedicate their time to scanning old prints in an effort to preserve the original version probably wouldn't exist. Sometimes movies are released that have a few errors left in, but the director probably would have fixed had they had the time or resources. And I can be forgiving of these things, to a degree. Movies are a product of their time, so digitally altering things with new technology is like telling a big fat lie and asking people to believe it, but I'm too old and tired to argue that point for the most part. I think there are a few things directors should be very careful not to change. The colour timing of the film and maintaining the grain and therefore detail are very high on that list. Digital noise reduction can be helpful if a film is particularly rough, but I still need to be able to see that I am watching human beings and not computer-generated cartoons. Anything that fundamentally changes the story or the characters should be left well alone. But some things I just care less about. Here's a couple of clips from Terminator 2 with some edits made. If you're unaware of the changes, I'd like you to watch and see if you can spot what was changed in the most recent release. First the original. Now the latest release. Did you spot it? How about this one? First the original.
Hang on!
Now the latest release.
Hang on!
That one's a little more obvious though, in my opinion. If you're not looking for changes, you probably wouldn't see either. In the first clip, the windows are already blown out, here, causing a continuity error a few moments later. The window was fixed up in the latest release so it doesn't come crashing out. I never noticed this, and even knowing it now, I still don't notice it when watching the movie. What I find interesting is that in this new version, the windows are not only kept on the truck, but 100% survive a crash. A few seconds later, they look like this, but apparently the massive impact of the truck hitting the ground did nothing to them. They are made of glass, right? There's a reason they went flying out in the original edit, because that's what would happen. The least they could have done is make the glass crack to match the later scene. You know, while you're going through the trouble of digitally erasing the frames with the windows flying out, just animate some cracks so it looks a little more like this. It's an astonishing lack of attention to detail given that we're going to all this trouble. And if the argument is that no one will notice, then I could argue that most people never noticed the problem in the first place. In the second clip, the crew can be seen for maybe a second in this shot, and they've been painted out in the latest release. I never noticed that either. I was too busy watching the movie to catch it. I suggest that's true of most people because most people will suspend their disbelief while watching an action movie car chase and try to live in the moment. But if it did bother you, then you'll be glad to see they got painted out. Unfortunately, thanks to the new color grading, you can't really see anything else in this clip either. There is one other change I want to show you. Can you see what was so wrong in this clip that looks so right in the next clip? In the first clip, there are a couple of frames where the prop bends and looks like this. Did you catch that? Did it really need fixing? Movies are like time capsules. When this was made, they used physical props, but today they would use CGI. Why mess with film history for something so small and inconsequential? Unlike many, I can be sympathetic to Cameron for wanting to fix these flaws. I didn't notice the error before, and I don't notice the correction either, so it doesn't harm my viewing experience of the movie. Messing with the entire look of the movie and destroying all the grain does, though. There are levels, and what you're willing to accept is unique to each of us. I think I need to take a break. Perhaps I'll watch another favourite from Cameron, True Lies starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. What do you mean that's not Arnold? Of course it is. Don't be silly. Here he is on the poster. In the DVD artwork, here he is running through the woods. Here he is riding a horse. Here he is hanging off a helicopter. Oh wait, that's not Arnold, is it? It is of course normal for stunt doubles to be used in action films, and if done well, you can't really tell. Just try not to have them look directly into the camera. True Lies has a lot of shots like this, and is in fact pretty well known for being able to make out the stunt actors. It's being released on 4K UHD soon, and I was wondering if Cameron would go to the trouble of mapping Arnold's face onto these stunt actors. If he did, how would I feel about that? It's not preserving the original, but it probably is something he would have done if he could have at the time. He did it for the latest release of Terminator 2, and you probably wouldn't have noticed that. There's an argument that True Eyes would benefit as a viewing experience by this if it was done well enough, even if it's not something I would advocate for. Anyway, the 4K is now released on streaming, and from what I've heard, the stuntmen remain, though sadly the restoration appears to have deployed an even more hideous AI digital noise reduction and upscaling that screen caps at least look utterly dreadful. And I'm not super surprised. We've been here before with James Cameron. Since no special effort went into mapping Arnold's face onto the stuntmen, I can't imagine he spent that much time on the restoration as a whole. He probably doesn't really care that much about it, compared to his other films at least. And that would make sense. It's never been considered one of his best, or as significant a film as his other work. True Lies never released officially on Blu-ray, so unlike Terminator 2, I can't just ignore it and pick up a better version. If I want to own this movie I like, this is the only option, so I'm hoping the disc looks better. But I'm not holding my breath. I have heard The Abyss looks pretty good, so fingers crossed on that one, but only time will tell. Originally, A Charlie Brown Christmas, and no, I haven't forgot this is a video about Charlie Brown, had quite a few issues with it. So when it aired later, many of these flaws were corrected, and overall, they helped with continuity and pacing. I don't have much of a problem with most of these changes, but two of them stand out as being rather poorly done. Near the start, Snoopy is hurling Charlie Brown into a tree, and then Linus into a sign with the Coca-Cola branding on it. When this was edited, they just cut Linus out. It would have made more sense to simply alter the wording on the sign rather than lose this animation. Perhaps it could have been the danger sign they used in the promo. Perhaps it could have said created by Charles M. Schultz or something. Sadly though, that joke and those frames are just gone. The most egregious issue comes at the end though, when the children are singing a song. Originally the song finished nicely, but again had Coca-Cola branding on it, so once again they just cut that scene short. And also faded the song out before it could finish. They had a few options for this at the time that would have involved some work and a bit more money, but instead they just cut it. Fair enough, I suppose, but on this 4K UHD it would have been nice if they restored the original cuts of these shots, just edited them to remove the branding. Even just letting the audio play out fully over the static The End scene would have been preferable. This YouTuber did it 10 years ago and it works pretty well. Sadly though, that hasn't happened here, despite having all the time, money and technology available to do so. I don't want to be too harsh, as this is true to the version most people have seen throughout their lives, but from a preservation and even artistic point of view, it would have been good to have those segments restored, and that they are mostly lost to time is a shame. How far you want to take restoration and preservation of older films is something each of us will have our own opinion on, but there are some things I can forgive, like this, and some I can't, like this. I'd like to end the video with a heartfelt thanks to those that stuck around to watch it all, and to those that have subscribed to this little channel of mine. Christmas can be tough and lonely for many people. I've been there myself, and it's through wonderful specials like this that I was able to enjoy some Christmas cheer. And I don't doubt this will continue to bring joy to people for many years to come. Unlike the 4K UHD of Terminator 2, which is trash. I'd also like to say happy holidays and give a shout out to some of my favourite YouTubers that might interest you, in case you haven't heard of them. Links to the damn fool idealistic crusader, Elliot Cohen, film blogger Sam, congrats on getting to 1,000 subscribers Sam, Nathan Jones and Chris Moen. Do check them out if you haven't already. Thank you all for watching, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you all in the new year. Bye. Why is it snowing in here?